All right, Chiefs Kingdom. Today I'm here with Arrowhead Tom of Kingdom Says Podcast. How are you doing today?
Hey man, I'm doing great. I am ready for Chiefs football. I think we all are at this point, but I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on. Excited to be here.
Yeah, yep. Glad you can make the time. First off, I'd like to talk about Trent McDuffie. He crossed my mind today. He has never had an interception in his NFL career. Do you feel that he is going to get his first interception this season?
Oh gosh, I mean, it, people don't like to throw at him, so that's part of it. And I think the way that he's utilized, I would say that's going to happen eventually, right? So there's a good chance it happens this season. I think he's going to be, he'll have some bigger matchups with L'Jarius Sneed gone. So he's going to get some more attention, some more of those, some balls thrown his way. But I think generally speaking, teams, even with Sneed there, really don't care to throw to him because he doesn't give a lot of room, a lot of he doesn't give up a lot of ground and coverage. So it's it's never necessarily been his game to be the ball production. He's going to break up passes. He's going to really be sticky and be all over his guy. So it's it'll come. Those plays will come. When they do. But I don't necessarily ding that against him to say, oh hey, he's not doing his job. I think he does his job so well that quarterbacks don't really want to risk it.
Yeah. Well, I think we're all ready and waiting for this Trent McDuffie interception, and
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's gonna happen sooner or later. That's what I can
Mm-hmm.
say. I do think it's gonna happen this season, but I said that last year too. But we'll just have to see what he can
Yeah.
do. But this Saturday, the Chiefs play the Jacksonville Jaguars for their first preseason game. What are you looking to see from the UDFA's, such as Carson Steele?
Yeah, I mean, I always try to remind people we kind of have a saying on the Kingdom Says podcast of managing our expectations, and this is the first preseason game, and there's going to be a lot of chatter. There's going to be a lot of movement. Um, you know, it's really fun to fall in love with some of those guys and to cheer them on. But this is a very talented team, so it's always an uphill battle to make that roster. Um, you mentioned Carson Steele specifically. I am very curious to see how Andy has plans on using Steele. If he's going to be more in that fullback role or more of a running back, and obviously they didn't carry a fullback last year on their roster, and that's something that they managed to survive the year without. They've got a lot of depth at tight end. They've got some guys who might be able to kind of play that flex position, a little bit of tight end, a little bit of fullback, kind of that H back role. Um, and I don't know. So I think some of it'll be just to watch um, the depth throughout. I think the other part, and they're not necessarily UDFA's, but some later round guys, at the cornerback position, Nick Jones and Kamal Hayden and some other guys that have been kind of those later round guys to see what they are going to be depth wise. Because that's always a position that, as talented as the Chiefs are, they seem to always have a couple of injuries at that spot. So, but with preseason games, it's always just, hey, let's manage our expectations. Let's keep everybody healthy. You know, go out, enjoy the game, be happy that football is back. But really, a lot of those guys are, you're looking for what they could be a year or 2 years from now, not necessarily what they're going to contribute immediately this year. So, of course, if somebody comes in and blows us away, that's awesome. But for a lot of that roster, there's only a handful of spots open. So,
Yeah. Well, I had a conversation with Kylie Winfrey yesterday, and we ended up talking a little bit about Justin Ross. And since we're talking about some guys that got to prove it, what do you think about Justin Ross? Do you think he has a chance to make the 53-man roster this year, or are you off the hype train for him?
oh man, um, it is hard for me to be off the Justin Ross hype train because I was a big fan. And that wide receiver room, it looks so much different than it did a year ago. And I do think that you're looking at Rasheed Rice, Hollywood Brown. Xavier Worthy. That's three of those spots that are locked up. Um, I will see kind of how the rest of it plays out. I think Kadarius Tony. I think Justin Ross. All those guys are fighting for those last couple of spots. And some of those, there's injuries factors in. I know Justin Watson was banged up the other day. He'd be a guy that I would probably assume will make the roster unless that injury is pretty significant. Um, the thing that it will come down to a little bit, and this is definitely something to watch in the preseason games with the changes on special teams, is how those players are utilized. I think sometimes we forget how important special teams is and how that can be the deciding factor between a guy like Justin Ross making the team or not making the team. Somebody else making that spot over him. Uh, I
Yeah,
definitely want to see him. Get some touches, get some reps in there, just because it seemed like there was a lot of hype last year, and it seemed like and he's such an easy story to root for. I know he had some stuff last year that kind of soured that story a little bit, but he's really come back from a lot, and so I'm definitely rooting for him. I I don't know, again, without having, especially without seeing a little bit more, just know exactly where we're at. But it sounds like he's had a really good camp. I know Pat speaks highly of him, so I think that um, there's a legitimate chance that he makes the roster. Right, he made it last year, and even that, some of the familiarity can be a big positive for him. So we'll see how that goes. It'll probably come back. It'll be some tough choices in that receiver room.
yeah, for sure. I got a hot take though. I think with the way Sky Moore is playing, I think that Nico Remigio is going to beat out Sky Moore and make the 53-man roster. I'm a big Nico guy. I really like him a lot.
Mhm.
He really showed what he did last year, and he's doing pretty good in camp so far. So
Mhm.
that's my hot take. I don't know. I think we're 50-50 on that when it comes to Chiefs fans. I think half will agree and half won't. I think it just makes sense though, because Sky's just really struggling. To be in his third year, he's struggling. And Nico is balling out and with less time. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard with Nico because he got hurt last year, so we didn't get to see some of those live reps. But from everything we've heard, last year and this year, and he seems to be somebody that the coaches really like. Sounds like he's got some special teams stuff. Man, I'm always careful just because I do remember, these players are humans. Unfortunately, Sky Moore in Kansas City has been, he just hasn't been in a position, and he hasn't experienced the success that I think a lot of people, including the coaching staff, wanted him to. I think when I've watched him play, he struggles with his releases, which was a strong point of his coming out of college. But he just kind of gets manhandled a lot. He can't really get separation. There's little things, and it's a strange. It's been a strange development for him, just in terms of, well, his lack of development and his lack of productivity and his lack of kind of showing some flashes. Seems like, for all intents and purposes, he's a good kid and he is working hard and all that stuff. I don't think it's anything to do with a lack of desire. Um, but I do kind of get this sense, and again, you kind of read between the lines in the press conferences and in the coverage, like, we're not really talking about Sky Moore a whole lot right now. It does feel like he's an odd man out in this situation, which is hard to chew on because he was a pretty high draft pick. But I, if he didn't make the roster, I really wouldn't um, be entirely shocked. Especially we saw the special team struggles early on in his rookie season. That was one of the things that he really, the things that were appealing about him as a prospect have not translated into his professional game. And so, whether that's, maybe it's sometimes it's just better for a fresh start somewhere else, and maybe that's the case here. But I would not be shocked by that at all, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like I said, if he keeps playing like this, he is not guaranteed to make the 53-man roster. I think same with Kadarius Tony. I think Tony's a little more safe right now because he's not really doing bad in training camp right now, and
Mhm.
Sky Moore was, as of a couple weeks ago. I really, like you said, I haven't heard much since that report came out. But I think Tony and Sky Moore, they got to prove it to make this 53-man roster. Does the behind the pass attempt from Patrick Mahomes, behind the back pass, I should say, from Patrick Mahomes happen in a game this season?
Oh gosh, that's a great one. I think that they're definitely working on it. They always work on some type of different wrinkles in the game. I think we saw some clips the other day of the some of the laterals that Travis Kelsey pulls out. I um, it would not surprise me if it was a behind the back, or even if they did like a kind of a modified Statue of Liberty kind of thing with it, where it's kind of a reverse handoff. Um, and we'll see. I think we see some of that stuff more early in the season, some more of those kind of playful motions and movements, and because you get that on tape, and then you can again force defenses to account for it later on in the season, and you can really use some misdirection. So, I ooh, um, you know what? I know I've been non-committal. I'll say yeah. I'll say we'll see it. We see it this year. We finally see it busted out.
I think so too. They've been working on it for, I think, at least 2 years. So I think we're gonna see it in the Patrick Mahomes era. The Chiefs have played in 4 Super Bowls and received 24 penalties. Their opponents have been flagged a total of 21 times. What is your message to people who feel that the NFL is rigging games for the Chiefs?
Yeah, I mean, listen. When I was a younger fan of the NFL, and even times now where it's really easy to get angry at the officials. It's really easy to blame that. Um, I've coached at different levels. I've worked with coaches. Spent a lot of time around athletics. I've also worked with referees and officials and that type of thing. So I, we had extensive conversations about it last year on the podcast. There are times where you're just going to have to overcome some of those human errors on the calls. It really stinks when those calls, affect a game. Um, but yeah, I think in the sense of saying the NFL rigs games or the NFL, that is, the there's an expression: extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. Um, and your team losing or getting the bad side of a call does not count as extraordinary proof, right? Especially when Kansas City statistically is not, flagged less than their opponents. And we've also seen, critical calls go against Kansas City. Um, you know, it, that narrative exists, and that narrative happens a lot with successful teams. I mean, and that's across sports. That's across um, even not internationally. Soccer fans have similar. It's not. It's human frustration talking. It's, hey, I think my team's better. They should have won. It can't be their fault, right? It can't be that there was these things. It's part of the grief cycle. We're negotiating. We're living in denial. Eventually, we need to find the find acceptance and go, hey, sometimes it's just not your day, and that's not a you know defense of all referees, because sometimes they are bad at their jobs and they make
Right.
mistakes. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like they don't. At the same time, and any, I think, professional knows, you know, some days you just got to live with it, and that stinks, but that's part of the game. And there's a mental toughness that is required to play at the highest level of athletics, which is, some days you do have to come in and play the other team and play the refs and play the weather and play the opposing crowd and play everything else, and you have to be up for that challenge. This is not a charity. That you're not given breaks. You have to go make them yourselves. And if you're winning by 30 points, you don't need to worry about a flag from the ref. So go out there, do your job, and I know it's not always that simple, but and it's easy to say when we've got a couple Super Bowl rings to make us feel better. But there was a long time when we didn't, and we were on the other side of that. And like I said, I was kind of going, oh, these refs, but it's part of that acceptance of going, hey, this is just part of the deal, and it is frustrating, but there's nothing, again, no legitimate claims to go, oh yeah, the Chiefs receive favoritism, the NFL, is favoring the Chiefs. There's not a lot of reason for that. So yeah, I think that's a tough claim to justify. You're welcome to feel that way, but if you want to apply logic and reason to that conversation, it gets a little messy.
Listen, anybody who feels that the NFL is rigging games for the Chiefs need to get their brain checked because that's just a fact. If anything, the NFL is against the Chiefs. They made so many bad calls this season
Mm-hmm.
against the Chiefs, especially I think the one that hurts the most would be when Kadarius Toney. He technically did line up off sides. I really don't know the whole story. Some people were saying the ref said he was good, and then another half of people said that he never checked with the ref. Either way, that was terrible. What was your reaction to that? There's Tony losing us that game against the
Yeah.
Bills.
Yeah, I mean, so that's a great example of how our emotions can react to things, and we talked about this when it happened. So I've coached on a sideline, not an NFL sideline, but at a lower level, right, a much lower level, and it is you. I've never seen that flag thrown on a wide receiver, and you check with the official. They do usually let you know, hey, you need to back up, whatever. There's kind of some warnings involved. I know that at the time, there was a lot of back and forth about, did he check with the official? Did they give him a warning? All that stuff. They don't have to give you a warning. They do have the power to throw that flag whenever. Um, Most of the time in those instances, they're gonna, it's similar to holding, right? Like if it's not blatant and intentional, you can kind of work through it. An official's job is not to catch every penalty that happens. An official's job is to maintain the integrity of the game and maintain the flow and the safety of the game. And so they that decision was made. They threw that flag. I think the other side of that we have to consider is, oh, what if they pick that flag up, right? Like, what do we do then? And I know the next couple weeks, everyone's screenshotting, this guy and this guy, and listen, it happens. NFL players line up offsides every week on defense and on offense. Um, it is one of those things that can be really hard to catch as a player, can be really hard to catch as an official, just because sight lines and angles and all of that stuff. It's easy for us as from the broadcast view because we've got the yellow line and the blue line and we've got 100 different camera angles. You have to remember these are people on a field, and if I'm 5 yards behind that receiver, he might look, but if I walk up next to him and I'm parallel, then I might be able to see that he's offside. So there's a lot of factors in there. I would say, that's a perfect example of, hey, not all the calls go the way of the Chiefs. But I would also say, just like they said that week, it wasn't that one play, and you never want it to be, relying on one play. That was as close to as it comes to, hey, this is a game being affected by the officials, and that's why it was frustrating. But at the end of the day, there were other opportunities for them to make plays in that game. That wasn't a fourth down play. That wasn't, if I remember right, it was second or third down. They had other plays right afterwards, and that's where I'll go back to the mental toughness because they lost it for a minute. And I've never seen Patrick Mahomes do that. That was a big point. Was he was so frustrated with that call and with all that, and the team struggled because they couldn't bounce back from that moment. Some of the all-time greats, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Brett Favre. Brett Favre is a great example of this because he threw so many interceptions. They say you have to have a short memory. You got to be able to move on from stuff like that. And it stinks. It's hard. You're excited, and then it goes away. But you got to be able to move on. So I don't. I didn't like the call. I still don't like it. I think it was some really fun play that got erased. I think it would have been an all-timer. Memory, all that stuff. I disagree with the call being made. It was technically correct in the sense that he was offsides. I think you could have played that game without that being an issue. But the moment that flag came out and they said this is what it was, they were kind of nailed to that call because you think about it, what does it look like if they do pick it up? Because then it definitely looks like they're fixing the games for the Chiefs. And so, again, that's where Um, I would have liked that to be a call that they make a little bit quicker, and they shut the play down and all that stuff, because at that point, whatever happens, it's coming back. And yeah, so it was a tough one. That was brutal, but I can't say, oh, the ref made the wrong call. I just think philosophically it was, again, I hope that he checked in. I know that there's differing stories. um, you know he checks in. It's supposed to operate a certain way. um, we probably won't ever know. We got a Super Bowl. I'm not too worried about that one play anymore.
Right.
If we didn't have that extra ring, I would have been real mad about it. But we've got the ring, so.
Yeah. Well, former Raiders coach John Gruden has been at the Chiefs training camp. I think the last 3 or 4 days, wearing Chiefs gear and everything. Do you think he's just there showing some love to the Chiefs, or do you think he could possibly be hired on to the coaching staff? What do you think's going on there?
I think Andy's always brought people in that he's worked with before. I think there's probably a little bit of Gruden's been out of the NFL for a little bit, kind of been out of the good graces, and rightfully so. He said some things he shouldn't have, and did some things that were a little sketchy. Um, I don't think that there's necessarily a desire to bring him into the coaching staff. I think he's probably looking at a head coaching role. I think that's what he wants. Um, and if not, he'll go do something else. He's made plenty of money. But I think that it is an example to say, hey, this is somebody who can be around. This is somebody who's still insightful. Just kind of I think it's more of a favor to him from Andy. And not to say that Gruden isn't, knowledgeable about football, but, Andy Reid's one of the all-time greats. And, I'm sure that there's, yeah, lots of conversations, but I think that it's more of an optics, and it's more of a favor to Gruden than it is, maybe even. And I could be wrong, but I would be surprised if they brought him into the coaching staff, just because I think Gruden probably wants a bigger role somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know. Some people have asked me. I really don't know what's going on there. Someone asked me if I would be mad if he got a coaching role with the Chiefs, and I don't think I'd be mad because, first of all, Andy Reid loves giving second chances to people. That's one of the great things he does. And then, John Gruden, I think he's a great coach. I think he could help out this team. So if he made this coaching staff, I
Mhm.
wouldn't be mad. I just don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I agree. I don't. I'm conflicted. I've never been a big John Gruden fan as a person, um, but if there's value there, if there's insight, um, absolutely. I think several years ago, when Andy first came to Kansas City, they brought in Brad Childress, who was the former Vikings head coach, as kind of a senior advisor type of thing. But really, this offensive coaching staff is pretty well rounded and pretty experienced. So I don't know if that would necessarily um, be something they need to look at, in terms of bringing him in as an official staff member. He can come in and consult. He can come in and chop it up and chat. But I don't know if they need to give him an actual position with the team.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. It's been one heck of a show. It's been a great show. I want to thank you for making the time to join this live stream.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate being here, man. It's been awesome.
Yeah. Well, Chiefs Kingdom. Thanks for tuning in. If you're still in here, make sure you like, share, subscribe. Oh, really quick before we get out of here, do you want to tell people where they can find your show and your Twitter, whatever?
Yeah,
Your handles?
absolutely. So we are around on all platforms. We are the Kingdom Says podcast. We're on Twitter, Kingdom Says at Kingdom Says Pod. My name's Arrowhead Tom. I am mostly our draft guy. I cover a lot of the draft stuff, but I come in and try to play piece. I get to hang out with two of my best buds who I've made going through this this journey with them, doing this show with them. That's Kyle Henning. He's at KThen16 on Twitter, and Garrett Williams, who is at Garrett720 on Twitter. The three of us have been doing this for a while now. It really is a project, a passion project for us, something we do out of the love for this team and for the community that comes around it. But yeah, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, anywhere you find podcasts. Really would love to get some support here. You guys leaving a like, review, all that stuff. Yeah, we're on YouTube as well. Again, all of it's under the Kingdom Says podcast, or just the Kingdom Says. I think we're the only ones that pop up when you type it in. So we would love to hear from you guys and get some support. And it's been awesome chatting with you, man.
Yeah, Chiefs Kingdom, go show some love, like and subscribe, do all that good stuff. With that being said, peace out, everybody.